Welcome back to the Lost Previews, where we talk about the preview chapters of The Lost Metal. That is Book 4 of Mistborn Era 2. I'm very sorry that we skipped last week. I was on vacation and we had some things going on. So this time we're going to have a double feature for you, a little bit longer episode. With me, I have Marvin.
Hi, I'm Felio.
And I'm Falcandy with the 17th Shard. So let's just dig right in. Last time that we were talking about the chapters, we didn't go over the rest of chapter 2. So we'll go into that and then start from 5 through 9.
So the last time we covered chapter 2, that was an incomplete reading actually from Brandon, and we got the rest as part of the official release. And it turns out that this bill that the Senate wanted to pass for supremacy of Elendil over the rest of the basin is put to a vote, and it passes. So Wex's campaign, basically, it fails. So he is not successful, and he's pretty upset about it. So this is leading into chapter 5. And yeah, in his Senate chamber, he finds Steris and his kids, and he talks to them. And Steris is also pretty upset, of course, about all her work being fruitless, more or less, or Wex is upset about it for her. But he also finds a little envelope with earring in it and a note that says, "You need to make a second once the proper metal arrives." So this note comes from Harmony, as he suspects. And yeah, so then they leave for home, and Steris and Kath, the governess, and also the little Tinwyl, their daughter, they leave by car, which is driven by Hoyt. And Max and him, because Max wants to cheer him up, but also just he wants to go flying. So they leave by steel pushing, more or less, so through Wex's elementic powers. And now in chapter 7, as they are flying through Elendil, they see a Malvish airship, and at first Wex thinks it's a trade ship. It later turns out to be a warship, as he finds out. And yeah, he takes them home to their penthouse in Alstrom Tower, where they play a little game of elementic fetch, where basically Wex throws away a ball elementically, and then they go fetch it again. And yeah, when the ship then it approaches their tower, actually, it turns out to be a warship, and Wex decides to approach it. And on this ship, he finds Captain Dahl, who turns out to be the new ambassador of the now Malvish Consortium to the Elendil Basin. And yeah, so they have a bit of a conversation about the current political situation and how they each benefit from each other. And little Max, he has to go to the toilet while they are talking. And so they have to wait for him. And it's a little, awkward, the situation, because they have to wait for him to be finished and talk during that. And after Max is done, they go back home. And Max briefly also discusses his conversation he had with Dahl with Steris again. And finally, they have received an invitation from Marasi to meet up at the mansion, probably the Ladrian mansion. And apparently it's about exciting news, which we'll find about later this episode. So yeah, what were your thoughts?
My first impression after reading about Wax and Max hanging out was that Brandon Sanderson is definitely a dad.
100%, yeah.
I just loved seeing Wax, playing with Max and playing their little game where he'd have Max throw the ball with a little metal piece inside it up, and then he pushes it somewhere. And I just thought that was really cute. And it was like a nice look into what Wax's life is like now.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And also just that he had a little leather harness made specifically for carrying Max around, or his kids. He might do it with Tinwyl as well if she gets, or when she gets older. And that's just so cute. And yeah, I still can't get over the fact that his name is Maxillian. But apart from that, very cute child. Yeah. Yeah. Another point is that Wax actually mentions within the chapter is that he is now content, and he really feels like he belongs in Elendil society now, mostly due to his family and his love for Steris and his children. While during the previous books, it has always been like, okay, he thinks more about how he fit in better in the roughs and how he doesn't like city life. And yeah, I find this really nice that he also seems to slowly be getting over Lessie's death. Well, her to death, I guess. So,
Death 2.0.
Yeah. he's starting to cope with it and like feel better about it. Or not better about it, but he feels better.
Be accepting of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually last night just finished a reread of actually a listen of Shadows of Self. And so the ending of that is just so down and so sad. And so it's like a real big juxtaposition to this, where it's like several years in the future from then and how different things have done. And he even mentions when he's standing up at the top of the tower and he's looking down and he barely sees any horse-drawn carriages and there's airships in the air and like technology is just booming at this rate, and he's just kind of accepting it now instead of being like the grumpy like, well, back in my day.
Yeah.
So now he's really just embracing it, I think, embracing the change and moving on basically.
Yeah. But something that is interesting about this technological change is that they haven't or the Malwish haven't shared their airship technology with them, which I found, I mean, it's very understandable and they need add metal for it, which is very precious. But it's still like, okay, they are not like openly sharing everything with each other. And that's also something Wex later on mentions, that like a leak he never really, or when he talks about the medallions and how they're made and things like that, he always leaves something out or tells them an obvious lie where like Wex can see, this isn't how it works. So yeah, very interesting dynamics still between the Northerners and the Southerners.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things happening with technology. Like they're talking about this warship that's showing up and it's huge and it's very obviously not a trade ship, and how they haven't really shared a lot of the information, and they don't really talk about even the medallions with them about like how they're being made or produced or anything.
Yeah.
A lot of tensions between them. Understandable because of everything that was like the bill failing, how they're doing this supremacy bill, and
it's an interesting shift also. I feel like when now that apparently the Southerners have like united under the Malwish, and that they now have like as this consortium or whatever, and now they send a new ambassador who's obviously a lot more warlike than the one we saw before, who they also who Dahl says like she became too familiar with the Northerners. So I wouldn't be like, Brendan has said before that we won't see too much of the Southerners in this book, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Era 3 would be like a Cold War sort of situation between the two nations or continents or whatever it ends up as. I could definitely see that being like a consequence of all this.
We even saw in the previous chapters new technology and weapons, and everybody is using it, and it's not just the Malwish. So there's definitely going to be that touch from the Malwish technology in this book, but maybe not as much of the political maneuverings with them.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I found that line from Darby pretty interesting when he said like, oh, we could have bombed your entire city in like minutes or whatever, like very quickly, and it would have been reduced to rubbles. It's like, okay, I mean, they could with the metal bombs, probably. Yeah, but that's probably not how you want to talk to somebody with political power. Like, could really realistically put it into Senate and say, okay, I received a threat from the Southerners. But yeah, interesting dynamic between the nations.
But Wex is thinking, after he talks with Dahl, he's thinking like, I don't think they're quite as advanced as they're saying that they are. I don't think they quite have as much of the technology as they're bragging about.
Yeah, I mean, that's also with the medallions where I said like, okay, some powers aren't available to them, apparently. So
speaking of powers, we see that Wax got some kind of a letter from, he thinks, Harmony with a spike earring, and he says a note that says, you need to make a second once the proper metal arrives. So there's going to be this new metal that's going to be explored, it seems like. Yeah, probably Trellium, as we'll find out or see some later as well again. And we already saw in Palm. So yeah, it's exciting somehow that we need to explore probably hemalurgy in this book, but also like, do we really want to explore hemalurgy? Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a fascinating idea, especially with the whole theme of mind control with these spikes and stealing it from others and rate of return and all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things to keep in mind when talking about the different spikes. And it's been used as a plot device too, and all throughout Mistborn.
Mm-hmm. It's like, on the one hand, I guess it is exciting that hemorrhagy finally becomes sort of a primary aspect of the books as well, because it's sort of like we had hemorrhagy, but it's always been like, okay, it's a thing that exists, but due to the nature of it, none of the main characters explore it in any way. And now we're finally getting some insights into it. And yeah, I wonder just how much Wax will be doing with it, because he also has like this strange relationship to Harmony at this point.
Yeah, he kind of just dismisses the note and he's like, I'll just deal with that later.
I mean, understandably.
Is there anything else in Wax's chapters that you wanted to talk to?
There's Hoyt. So.
Oh, right. He shows up. He's the carriage driver. Mm-hmm.
The car driver at this point, but yeah.
Oh, right. Car driver.
Yeah.
So I wonder what he's doing here.
Especially because it's been like, 6 years now since the last book? Has he been sticking around for this entire time? And like, we know that he goes to places that are interesting and like, or his fortune or whatever carries him. But 6 years seems like a long time for him to stick around. So was he like, I don't know how that works logistically with him being a driver. Like, that's a proper job. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Well, they know him by name. Mm-hmm. And it seems like he was there right after the vote. And I don't know if that's just me like being suspicious whenever he's being mentioned, but it feels like he wanted to be there to bring Steris and Wax back home. So maybe he could have some kind of conversation or something, or just like overhear them talking. And then Wax decides to fly off instead. So we didn't quite get any interaction between them.
I definitely think that he inserted himself as driver for Wax specifically, so he could be close to this important person. But I'm not sure. Like, I do think he's legitimately just his normal driver, and it doesn't only sometimes drive him, which is like an odd thing for Hoyt, because even as a wit in some area, he would constantly leave and like not be there. But you can't exactly do that when you have to drive somebody around. But yeah, maybe he still does it and just says, okay, here, take this other driver for now.
Yeah, that is a good point. Like, he has to be very dependable in this kind of a job where he's picking them up at a certain time. So he can't just go traipsing about the whole Cosmere.
Yeah, or play a beggar somewhere else. Yeah.
Right.
So
he forgets to take his mustache off. He's like, oh no.
And I guess one final thing about these Wax chapters was when Wax was playing fetch again with Max, which I forgot to mention earlier, is that Max invented the game, apparently. So what I really want to see, and I hope, or I almost am sure we are going to see in the Era 3 books, is Elementic Sports. Sort of like, I don't know, Quidditch or whatever is in Harry Potter. Mm-hmm. We're going to have some sort of elementically enhanced sports. So
I wonder, when do people snap in this era? Like, is it like just a natural process? I know that
it's more humane.
There's a wob somewhere that Harmony didn't like it. So he changed the way that they do it, or introduced knowledge about how to reveal their elemental power.
It's definitely changed, and I think like he changed to be more humane in a way, like that you don't have to almost beat somebody to death only for them to snap. So
or have some traumatic experience.
But we don't have any specific, I think, and I feel like it's a perfect opportunity for like little Max. Maybe we're going to find out if he has any powers, and they're going to make him snap.
A huge plot in Era 2 was them trying to breed allomancers, and we have Wax, having children now, and he's a twin-born. And I mean, we don't really know anything about Steris, but
well, we do know that there's like potential there, because she was one of the ones who got kidnapped. So
right, maybe it can like skip a generation or something. So that'd be really interesting to see anything with Max or even little Tindwyl.
Yeah,
probably not in this book though.
actually wouldn't be too surprised if, like, as I don't know, if Max turns 6 now, and maybe that's like their age where they say, okay, now it's time for the ritual. I could see it, but maybe not. Yeah, maybe it's too young still.
It was really cute when Max was using Wayne's little sayings about bad turds, and that was like a callback just to the prologue from this book, where
Definitely.
Wayne, when he was a little kid, he was saying bad turds.
Yeah, definitely. Like, in general, like, Wayne is this funny uncle character, sort of, or fulfills this sort of role for Max. It's also when he's on the toilet on the warship, and like he traded their toilet paper for something because they're fancy white toilet paper. And when Sirius asks what did he trade it for, like, well, what would you trade?
Like, oh, okay, we know.
Yeah. So,
it's just cute little boy humor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Wayne humor.
Well, yeah.
Basically the same thing. Yeah.
I just thought that was really cute because Wayne is stepping into this uncle role, and he's kind of counteracting Wax and Steris, who are very proper and they're working in political roles. But Max has this uncle who's teaching him, kind of street smarts a little bit.
Yeah, it's also like an interesting juxtaposition just when Rex is talking to this new ambassador, like very serious, and basically the fate of their nation is a little on the line, and then little Max comes, fancy toilets and whatever.
Bathroom.
Yeah, so definitely
cuts the tension very well.
Exactly, yeah. It's sort of almost like he is the way, like Brandon wrote this specifically, so he is the Wayne to Wax now that Wayne is off with Marasi, probably. It's like he sort of fills that role a little bit now, yeah.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. All right. So that was the rest of chapter 2. That was chapter 5 and chapter
7 and 9, yeah.
So after all of that was going on, we also had some chapters with Marasi and Wayne just kind of bouncing between the two. So we'll go over those. So in chapter 6, we have Marasi continuing, and she confronts the cycle, that man that she found, and she was chasing him. And she has a grenade that has some kind of a steel pushing effect, and she uses it against him, makes him lose his gun. And then he shows up with this brutish, muscly build, and she realizes that he has this faring ability. And as he's being confronted by her, he actually mentions to her that Trell specifically wants her, the law woman. So that's kind of an interesting little tidbit that we get from him. He also happens to have gold ferrochemy because he's healing. And as he corners her and it looks like he's about to overtake her, his eyes turn red and he says some creepy words, and she uses a grenade, another steel pushing grenade, and it pushes her all the way away from him. And they kind of scuffle, and she manages to dig out his spikes as he's trying to reheal. And once she removes the one Trellium spike that we see, he dies. Then in chapter 8, she's leaving from that area, and she's all bloody. And she finds Wayne, and he's playing cards with the gang that he was left to tie up with his speed bubbles. And then they have their little plan called instant backup. And Marasi puts this big speed bubble up, or a slow bubble up. And she's waiting there with the guys who are tied up. And Wayne goes to get some more of the police force to help out. And as she's waiting for Wayne, there's a mysterious woman who shows up with a mask. And she doesn't say anything. She doesn't enter the speed bubble. And then she leaves before Wayne returns. And that's where we'll end up with them.
So obviously the big thing here is the cycle and how he talks to Marasi and that he has a Trellium spike in him. When before he dies, he delivers this little speech to her about like the world of ash returning and things like that, or like that the ash comes again. And that's really creepy that his eyes also go red. So
Yeah, he says a lot of interesting things. So I'll just read the quote because it's kind of spooky. It says, "The ash comes again," the man said through bloody lips, his voice strangely grating. "The world will fall to it. You will get what you deserve, and all will wither beneath a cloud of blackness and a blanket of burned bodies made of ash. Your end," the voice whispered, "your end comes, either in ash or at the hands of the men of gold and red." Gold, and then he dies.
Yeah.
So she, in her point of view, she's thinking like this is kind of a strange, grating voice. And then even later on, she's like thinking about how terrible it was and how the message was really strange. I don't know about anyone else, but this kind of reminds me of like a death rattle from Stormlight. It's very prophetic sounding.
Yeah, yeah. It is the same thing that, or not the same thing, but very similar to what Miles said. Miles Hundred's life at the end of Alloy of Law before he was executed, where he also talks about like these men of gold and red which will come to like kill them all or dominate them all. So yeah, who are these men of gold and red is the question.
Yeah.
Probably minions of Trell at this point, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the prevailing theory. Actually, it's there's another mention that the cycle says, and he's talking about how he's going to earn his place by killing Marasi. But right before that, he mentioned that Trell wants Marasi.
Oh, yeah.
So does Trell take like zombie hosts or avatars or something? Like, does he revive them, or does he do something with their cognitive shadow? Like, who knows?
Maybe these are cognitive, like basically Trell fused, if you will, in a way. Like he takes their cognitive shadow and sticks them into new bodies or even their old bodies or something like that.
Their eyes shine red when he's talking through them. It's a lot of parallels with things that we've seen in other books in the Cosmere.
Yeah. The cycle does use the term avatar here for something that Trell chooses. And avatar is a charged term in the Cosmere. So, because like Bavardin Autonomy has avatars, and the prevailing theory at the moment is that Trell is one of the avatars. So, is this the Cosmere term avatar, or is it just like avatar in the general sense that he chooses people to possess or represent him? I
mean, the word avatar is kind of like a general term for a host or some kind of an image of something that's representing something else. So it could just be that, but I think that word is being used for a reason. I don't think that it's just a coincidence.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we haven't learned much yet, but like things are gearing up now. Like Trell is getting more involved, and I think Brandon said that we won't deal with Trell in this book, and he's more.
I mean, like all of Marasi's chapters have been about.
Sorry, like deal with as in fight him directly and like finish him off more or less. Like okay, he's an Era 3 threat that we are now fully setting up.
He's not like the big bad of this book.
Yeah, well, he really is because but I guess it's more like the set is the big bad for this book, and they serve Trell, but Trell themselves isn't like the focus yet. In a way, I guess is how it works. Yeah, but definitely looking forward to finding more about these Men of Gold and Red and everything.
This whole part with the cycle is interesting because Marasi pulls out his Trellium spike, and that is what finishes him off, which is kind of interesting because I went back and looked at the picture with all the spikes in the body, the hemalurgic table, and I actually noticed on there that it says that people will have a steel linchpin in order to counteract some deadly side effects of having 4 spikes. And it's very distinctly mentioned in this that he has 4 spikes in his ribs. So it's kind of interesting that maybe this Trellium spike is doing something that counteracts that. It's almost like it's controlling them, like the one that was in the sternum.
Mm-hmm. So I think we know, I think that force spikes grant you the ability to fully control a human soul, because like it's so damaged that you can fully control it with emotional elemency. So I wonder whether, like, is the Trellium spike enough for Trell, or I assume that Trell is controlling them directly, or at least somewhat directly, when they have the glowing red eyes. Is only the Trellium spike responsible for that, or is it that they have or that this cycle in this case had 4 spikes? Like, that's something I'm not yet sure about.
It's kind of like a red herring that he has 4.
Yeah. So that's also why I'm thinking, like, why I thought about, is this Trellium spike, was it important that she removed the Trellium spike specifically? That he then died? Or was it simply that whatever, like, that it was 4 spikes, that they were kept alive by just being a puppet, and as soon as one spike was out, the control was gone, and they weren't a puppet
like a
anymore.
Mistwraith or something.
Yeah. But I don't know. Could be.
Yeah, that's a good point, though. It's kind of intentionally obfuscating the reason for the different spikes. Yeah, this whole sequence with the cycle, it was really interesting. It gave me more questions than answers, for sure.
100%, yeah. So something that I've found interesting in general is that the set now apparently grants a lot of spikes to these lowly officers as well. Like, a cycle is the lowest ranking officer, and he has 4 spikes. So clearly they probably have enough spikes at this point to just give them out to people. And yeah, that's really concerning for how the people might have,
because you have no idea what combination of abilities these people have, so there's no way to really prepare for a fight with one.
Yeah. And I guess, so he had 4 spikes, of course, and we know that he had, what's it, pewter ferrochrome, so strength storing, and he had gold ferrochrome, so healing.
Yeah.
What did he have, a third power, or was it more like mental fortitude or whatever that some of them grant, like the more weird ones? And what did the Trellium spike store? Did it store any power, or was it just, because that's something I also could see. That maybe the Trellium spike actually contains the cognitive shadow of someone, and that's what's controlling them, or the body.
That was what I was thinking. That was my theory when I was kind of wondering, what does this do?
Yeah. So I could definitely see that happening, because it's also like the theory with how Kelsia got back into a body, that he basically put his soul into a spike.
Stapled on.
So, maybe not in the spike, but somehow like as a grafting sort of thing. Yeah. But yeah, still definitely agree that more questions than answers in this chapter.
Yeah. And it was actually really interesting. So I was wondering, maybe a cycle is not necessarily a low level, but maybe it's more like an enforcer or someone who is given more fighting ability than other abilities. And then maybe the other sets, the other
members or ranks.
The other members, they get different ability, like a different selection of abilities. Yeah. So maybe they separate people like that instead.
Could be the case.
Because he mentions to Marcy that by capturing her or killing her or whatever, that he gets immortality. So he's just fighting for, like, I don't know, a raise.
Maybe, yeah. That's interesting in general, like what exactly is true about that he's telling her. Like, would he actually get something out of it if he killed her, or is it just like, okay, Trell tells this, the people or the higher ups in the set tells this, so they are more fanatic? Could go either way, yeah.
It's almost like religious in a way.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Actually, it's definitely religious in a way, because they're worshiping this mysterious otherworldly god.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just trying to earn their space in their version of heaven, I guess, like their immortality, and kind of creepy.
Definitely, yeah. And I don't think we talked about it yet, but why would Trell want Marasi in particular? Like, do you have any theories there, or?
No, I mean, I was just thinking maybe it's because she's very intelligent, very, like, kind of a go-getter. Like, she rose in the ranks very quickly because of her ability as an investigator. But I was also thinking maybe it had something to do with her ability, because we haven't seen anyone else have her allomancies.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's very rare or not. Maybe they're looking for something more time manipulative.
Maybe, yeah. Something that I just came up with is that probably isn't quite right, but she has used the bands before, so maybe her spirit web is swapped in some way that's like useful for Trell. It might just be like that she's a very clever person and like a useful asset to have. Probably also against Wex in general. Like if they have Marasi, they're going to be in a more powerful position for negotiations and whatever. Yeah.
Yep. Very interesting chapters here. I was really interested to see the direction that this book is going.
Oh yeah. Especially we have some more setup here now. Like apart from all that with the cycling, we have seen that the Trellium spikes is repelled by other spikes, which might just be that it's made, from a different metal, but it could also be something that's because of the charge, maybe. I don't know.
It's kind of magnetic in a way, where it has a repelling magnetic force. Yeah, because she had to store it in her belt, like in a separate spot from the other spikes that she was collecting.
And then we, of course, also see this mysterious woman, which stands in front of Marasi for a brief second.
Yeah.
Any ideas who that might be?
Not a one. Not at all.
Same, yeah.
It's a new player has entered the arena.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure, but I suspect that it's one of the people that, like in the blurb, it was mentioned that Marasi is approached by an off-world organization that wants to recruit her, and maybe that's one of them. I don't think we have any group in the Cosmere that like wears black cloth masks. Yeah, so
this mysterious figure shows up, and she's wearing a black mask. She has straight black hair, and she sees Marasi because Marasi is there, and I'm assuming what they see is like she's just frozen, like doing whatever she does. And so this person knows not to step into that bubble and just watches and then leaves before the constables arrive. So it's hard to tell if this is a bad guy or a good guy, you know? Like you don't know. Is she there to help? Is she there to just see what's going on? Does she have something to do with these off-worlders that are trying to recruit Marasi? And that's another thing. When we talked about the blurb, the off-worlders are wanting to recruit Marasi. Why? We don't know. Yeah. And now Trell is trying to recruit Marasi. Why? We don't know. So there's some kind of a mystery with Marasi going on.
Oh, yeah. So that's definitely also something that, I mean, it's obviously going to be explored in the book, but that's one of the things that I'm now most excited about, to find out more.
Oh, yeah.
Who's this person? Why does Trell want her? Like all these things, yeah.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to say regarding the Marasi and Wayne chapters?
I guess one final thing is that I found Plan Instant Backup pretty neat. Like the name is pretty neat, and it's a pretty useful application of Marasi's powers, because previously they actually always thought even out of combat they weren't particularly useful, but here they found a use where they can like get instant backup more or less, which is pretty nice. Yeah,
it's nice to see her ability being used in a practical way for her job. It's just really creative, I think, especially because she thought originally, I'm useless, I have the worst power, doesn't do anything. But now she's using it, and it's like super handy, especially with these grenades that they've made. Okay, so last week we did not go over the broadsheet, And I would like to talk about the broadsheet now.
Definitely,
because it has some really interesting things. So did you want to kind of give a little summary about what was going on in those?
Yeah, sure. So let me see. Yeah, okay. So we have, let me see, how many articles is it? Like 4 articles or 5 articles that we can see on this section of the broadsheet. One of them is Henderwim presents Nikki Savage and the Compass of Spirits. So a new Nikki Savage story that we can talk about a little bit. Then something about the Elendil supremacy, probably that it threatens Bilming, maybe. So it's cut off there. But something that talks about the supremacy bill that was passed in Elendil in the Senate. Then a letter to the editor about Sunipub ads, which is complaining that they aren't historically accurate at all. Then a guest editorial about a sport, I guess, or a game called Noseball, which is very dangerous apparently, and like they don't want it to be played anymore. Then there is an article about The Man Who Electrified Time, which is a novel by some author from Bilming. And finally, there's like an ad, I guess, for somebody looking for a Bendalloy misting who would cook for them or be a cook at their cafe. Yeah.
I love that idea of a misting having a restaurant and being able to cook these long cooks really quickly and serve it to their guests. That's such a great little piece of world building.
Yeah, definitely.
And you mentioned earlier that you wanted to see sports, and we have a sport.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's elementically enhanced, I guess. The Game of Death himself, Noseball. Maybe it uses...
Noseball? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
Noseball?
Maybe it's sort of like when you always headbutt the ball or something, like a football. I don't know, but yeah.
It's called the Game of Death itself, or himself.
Himself, yeah.
Noseball.
So maybe Marsh did invent it. It would be kind of fun, but I doubt it. Yeah. But yeah, I like all these articles in general. Like the Nikki Savage story is going to be pretty interesting. Also that it's now presented by Henderwim, because last time we had a Nikki Savage story, it was presented by Allomancer Check. And apparently, I think we saw somewhere that, I can't remember where it was, that they like parted ways, Henderwim and Allomancer Check. But I could be remembering that.
That little story has some really interesting things. Like, I was reading, I was like, what?
Oh, yeah.
So the aluminum dinosaur bones that 2 Kandra merge to be able to turn into this ornithosaur.
Yeah.
Like, this is just wild.
And I wonder, of course it's going to be like embellished a little bit and not quite true.
Yeah.
But I thought that the Nikki Savage stories were at least somewhat grounded in fact. This doesn't sound a lot like that, but who knows? Maybe that really was her story. Maybe we'll find out at some point in like Isaac's Nikki Savage stories.
Oh, I'm so excited for those Nikki Savage. I think that that's going to be really fun to read, like just a really fun story, just like what the people of Elendil would probably do. They'd find their next chapter and everybody would, go around the newspaper and listen to someone read it out loud. I can't wait for the Nikki Savage books.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. The other fun thing I found in the broadsheet was this letter to the editor about Suni Incorporated or whatever ads that depict an historically inaccurate Tensoon or Sunipub, because in when fan artists draw Tensoon, they often draw an Irish wolfhound, because in the books he's called a wolfhound, and everybody just assumes that that's what Brandon meant by that. But are some wobs that Brandon is like, oh, everybody draws him like that, and it's fine, of course, because people may draw him however they want. But I feel like that's throwing a little bit of shade at these, or at this fact that there's a wob where Brandon says, no, he's actually more like a wolf who's also a dog, more or less,
a hound.
Yeah, more like a husky or something like that, I guess.
It breaks it off in this little letter right in the middle of a word. So it says depictions of the Ascendant Warrior's companion as a TER. So it just breaks it off. It makes me wonder, like, what is that? Is it a breed of dog that they're going to be talking
probably
about?
Something like Terrace,
like a terrier,
wolfhound or whatever. Terrier could also be, but maybe because like it's an Irish wolfhound in our world, so maybe Terrace wolfhound in theirs. I don't know. Yeah.
I wonder if when they plan out these newspapers, if they really put effort in breaking it off at just the right point where it makes you like, I got to get to the next one.
Who is it? Ben and Isaac, they almost certainly are for these. So, yeah.
There's a lot of little tidbits in here because there's even a little section where the newspaper is retracting someone's comments. So there was an editor, Kindlip Turneville, and she was making really mean comments about the mayor, apparently, calling him an irascible bore, no smarter, less attractive, and unable to keep from rolling around in every mire he comes across. I love that they actually, instead of retracting it, they just reprinted it.
Yeah, yeah. But what I also find interesting is apparently that this person vanished or like disappeared somehow. So
mysterious maybe disappearance.
Less than like civilized practices than Bilming, when how they treat with or deal with political dissenters. I don't know. But definitely want to see the rest of this. So this is only a fourth again, probably of the broadsheet.
Yeah, and, upper left quadrant is probably what they'll call it in the audiobook.
So definitely excited to see the rest of it, and especially the Nikki Savage story. I assume it would continue there a little bit. So yeah.
I really like that we also have a canon depiction of the governor and vice governor here. A terrace woman, and what's the governor's name? Varlance, and then Adawathwin. Love those terrace names.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I mean, I'm also interested then when we get the upper right quadrant of the broadsheet, what exactly the newspaper is even called. Like it's the two something.
It says actually in the retraction, it says it's called the Two Seasons.
Okay. Cool.
Which is kind of interesting. I wonder why it's called the Two Seasons. Do they only have 2 seasons on this part of the hemisphere?
I don't know.
And the very top, the artwork behind the title of it, it looks like a really high tech, fancy city with all of these spires and battleships, and it looks like a monorail or something going around it.
Yeah, like they depict Bilming
it's really cool. So is that supposed to be Bilming?
I assume so, or that's what they want Bilming to be like, I guess.
City of the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of really nice little pieces of information in that we didn't go over last time. Sorry about that.
Now we should be back on track, like in the coming weeks.
Yes.
But yeah.
All right. Well, that has been our next episode of The Lost Previews, where we're going over Era 2's last book, The Lost Metal. If you enjoyed that, please give us a like on our video and join us in our Discord on 17th Shard, on our forums, and SoundCloud, Patreon, wherever you can find us. Bye.
Bye.